What's the most out-of-touch thing a rich person has said to you? I was working at a car dealership and saw the owner pull up a $250,000 Porsche GT3. Told him how much I loved the car and dreamt of owning one someday. Owner looked at me confused and said, "What do you mean? We sell them right here, you know." Totally blew my mind that he didn't realize his employees couldn't afford the cars they were selling. Long ago, when I was a server in a country club, I was very new to properly opening wine bottles. As I was using my key to take off the foil and gash the webbing on my handbag, husband and wife at the table, I put down the bottle and was about to leave when he says, "Who told you to stop pouring?" I picked it up, poured the wine, dribbling blood all over the white tablecloth, went outside, had a smoke and thought about my life. One of my former co-workers grew up in a wealthy family and married into more wealth, but they decided she should work anyways. She was outside her car crying one day, waiting for her husband to pick her up, saying she couldn't drive her car because a light was on. My buddy looked. It was a low tire pressure light. He asked if she wanted help filling up the tire. Her sobbing response, "This is a Mercedes. You can't just put air in the tire." Had some kid in his early 20s start working at the restaurant I was at. Total trust fund baby. But his parents made him get a job or they would cut him off. Phone, car, apartment, school, credit card, everything. We were talking about plans for the summer. I mentioned I was gonna take a weekend to head north and visit my mom. Someone else was going camping. Another guy was taking a long weekend to help his brother move. Holy cow, you guys have no idea what vacation means, do you? I'm taking my girlfriend to Spain for 2 weeks and then spending a few days in Italy before we come back. He got real upset when I asked him where he was gonna work when he came back. Apparently, he didn't understand that taking 3 weeks vacation or even 2 months into a job isn't a thing, especially when part of that was during our busiest season of the year. Even better, when we all looked at him and told him we couldn't even afford a week off, let alone in Spain. He didn't last long. This is exactly why his parents had him take a job, so he could get a couple of reality checks and also appreciate what work is, or at least appreciate what not having to work as hard is. They lived in Boston and we were talking about how small condos are there. They were lamenting that they had no space and, as a result, they had to buy another condo. This was Beacon Hill, because they ran out of space to store their Persian rugs. My boss's wife grew up wealthy and then married an heir to the throne for a multi-million-dollar organization. She's meandering around our office bullpen one day and brings me into the conversation. "How about you? Where would you take your lady on a honeymoon?" Me, "I dunno, go to the coast for a week and just enjoy the sun." She laughed out loud at me and said, "Oh my God, no woman will ever marry you unless you're going to take her on a Hawaiian honeymoon." At the time, I made $10 an hour. In college, I made most of my money cleaning and tutoring for rich families. Here are the highlights. It's so much more convenient to have a sauna in your house. We ordered our wallpaper from Europe. It's the only way to go. I just bought the empty lot next to ours, so we won't have neighbors. And my personal favorite, rich person's kid. Gosh, I can't find any babysitting jobs. They've been taken by the 1%. Rich parent, honey, you are the 1%. I have no hair on my body. You should have your husband take you to get laser hair removal. It only cost me $10,000. Maybe in my dreams, she was the mayor's daughter and I was catering her dog's birthday party. When I was a freshman in college, I had made a couple friends. People ask me why I took my studies so serious. I just said, well, I have student loans I gotta worry about afterwards, so trying to do the best I can here to get a nice job. A kid from very, very wealthy parents goes, "What's a student loan?" Built a $3 million plus house for a couple. After the neighbors built their home, we're talking, and the wife says, "That little house is so dinky." We have a joke going that we call it the helps house. Now this is still a $750,000 to $1 million home, no less. Just struck me as not very grounded. My boss is an attorney. A client who was filling out her financial statement for a divorce realized that she had forgotten to include her student loans on the report. Laughing somewhat ruefully, she said, I can't believe I forgot to include that. And in a bright sunny voice my boss laughed and said, I sometimes forget that I own a boat. The client and I quietly locked eyes with a shared understanding of how out of touch that was. One thing I've learned about very wealthy people, if they tend to hang around with other very wealthy people. I mean, if I want to take a vacation to Aspen and go skiing, I'm going to pay a lot for that. Between flight, equipment rental, and hotel, a wealthy person will just talk to their friends, who will offer up their or multi-million-dollar chalet that they have just for funsies. Wealthy people will literally have a ski chalet that they rarely go to that houses all of their top-of-the-line ski equipment and just offer it to their friends. I worked for Medicaid. The big bugs at the state government level had a poverty exercise where they had to try to budget at poverty level and live on it for 3 days. That was so difficult. No kidding, pal. That whole idea pissed me off so bad. Met a guy on a backpacking trip that said he couldn't understand why all these backpackers stayed in hostels when there are so many hotels around. I pointed out that most of us have budgets and hostels are cheaper. The thought had just never occurred to him that we can't all afford that. Same thing with restaurants. He just never considered that nicer places aren't in everyone's budget. Boss, my wife and I decided that you and your wife should join us in the Caribbean. I'll pay for everything. We appreciate the offer, but we won't be able to afford it. Boss, why? I'd have to hire someone to watch the kids. Boss, what? Surely your nanny can handle that. You've never been to Disney. Did your parents not love you or something? My parents were raising 3 kids, working 2 jobs on poverty wages. Isn't it funny? We are the same age, but my dad bought me a condo, and you have to work 2 jobs. It's only $1,000. All right, then give it to me. You're just letting money stop you. Yes, it does that. No, I'm letting my lack of money stop me. Money has been tight, so we have to wait a couple more weeks before we break ground on the new air-conditioned stable for the horses. I was talking to my manager about a mistake on a check. This isn't even enough to cover my daughter's daycare for the month. Well, what did you do with the money you were just paid? Ma'am, food, rent, electricity, and car payment? Boom, check gone. I dated a rich guy who loved my authenticity, and he would pick me up in one of his dad's cool collector cars and take me to record stores. When I went to visit him, I showed up in my grandpa's old Ford F-150 truck. He asked me why I drove around in that thing. I shrugged and said, because I'm poor. And he said, no, you're not. It was like I ruined his whole hipster aesthetic, and he realized I wasn't grunge. I was between jobs and a bunch of my friends told me that I should take the time to go travel the world. Just because someone doesn't have a job doesn't mean they can just up and travel the world. In fact, the opposite is more likely. But also B, you jerks thought the reason I wasn't traveling the world because I hadn't thought of it. I worked for a very wealthy lady. Her son graduated college with some useless degree, and she put him to work answering phones. She also bought him a car. Can you believe it? I told her I wanted a blue car. She didn't get him a blue car, so he asked her to paint it. She refused. I could see his naivete as he spoke, since he truly thought this was something I could relate to. Sorry, kiddo. I had to work at Chuck E. Cheese as a teenager to be able to afford to buy a lousy car that overheated if I drove for longer than 20 minutes. I live in southern Spain, and here it's so hot during summer months that you can't even get out of your house till 9 to 10 p.m. A lot of people, including me, can't even afford having air conditioners in their houses, and they just survive the hot temperatures inside as they can do it, usually spending the day sweaty and tired. A friend of mine lives in a huge house, one of the hugest I've ever been, with many rooms and an air conditioning machine in each one of them. A few days ago, he started complaining about how tired he was for having to take such a long walk at night in order to turn off all the air conditioners in the house. That day I've had to take 4 showers to feel just a bit refreshed, and I recognize I felt violence taking up control of my body while he was speaking. Worked for a small company that was owned by 2 wealthy individuals. They were very kind and generous, but completely out of touch. One day was at my desk, and my then boss came to me and said he was leaving early for the day to go water skiing because the weather was nice. It was early summer and the weather was no nicer than it had been the rest of the week. I inquired where they were going, thinking it was somewhere near where we were, and he said he was going to his friend's house in Florida. He'd just booked his private flight, round a 3 to 3.5 hour flight law. Then there was the time he left early to fly to his friend's house to go quail hunting. The other owner, also wealthy, would jet around the world on a whim to go surfing, like everywhere. During a conversation about what we were doing for the holidays, one year he said he rented a big house in Canada and hired a helicopter so he, his family, and friends could go heli skiing. It was total normal thing to him lol. On the other side, they would give great gifts like good wine, dinners, sometimes small trips, stuff like that. Very nice people, and I sometimes miss working for them and seeing them, but they both basically semi-retired during the pandemic. Thank you for watching. Share the most out of touch thing a rich person said to you, and don't forget to check out our other videos and subscribe.